Welcome back to Metaphysical Life Support, Home Edition. I'm Naomi Eklund, and we are here today with Sarah Denae in continuing some really intriguing conversations. Sarah, thanks for sticking with us. And we got a little bit sidetracked, but I still thought it was interesting in our last episode. So we want to kind of stay on topic, which is probably more me than anybody else, because I love my rabbit holes. And let's talk a little bit about generosity, which you talked about that being part of having faith in your abundance, which I completely agree, and all the different types of generosity, and also the idea of receiving financial support while we're using our gifts. So where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, I think what comes up for me, what typically has come up for me, is a real fear, fear that somehow if I, I'm just going to say it, we've been talking about the divine, if I surrender to the divine and let the divine guide me in giving of my gifts, that somehow I'm just going to be, giving and giving and giving and not receiving anything in return. And so there's a kind of a leap of faith that I am being, I guess, called to do.
Well, have you had that experience of overgiving?
Yeah, but usually it's not coming from a place of giving, my intentions are not pure, right?
Well, and as I can't, not being a man, I can't speak from a man's point of view, although I try sometimes. So as women, I don't know about you, but I was trained that a woman's work is to give and give and give and meet everybody else's needs.
Yeah.
So that goes back to a previous conversation when we're talking about giving or doing anything from this training that's exterior versus from this sense of purpose and soul.
Yeah.
So
right.
What you're specifically talking about is the purpose and soul of generosity.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess the way I've been trying to sort of see it is, what I've been asking the question, and I use the word God sometimes as a, and then I exchange that with the divine and, life force. And yeah, I use all the words, but in this case, God works for me. So I've been praying, like, God, what would you have me do today? What would you have me do in this moment? And who would you have me be in this moment? And there's a kind of opening that occurs in that prayer for me, that allows me to participate in my life as a, channel of the divine. And you can ask that question in your work as well, like the work that you've already established for yourself, the clients you already have. You can bring that question in to your life at any given moment. And I think that kind of creates that egoless state to where you are actually giving gifts without necessarily an expectation of return in the moment, but it is the kind of gift that will open the channels of abundance whenever the divine timing allows it.
So what I'm hearing you say is that, if we think about flow and we think about allowing ourselves to flow and having faith in the messages we receive from divine, soul. So if we make the choice to be in the flow and we ask the divine, what can I do right now? Or what's the best thing I can do right now? There's going to be answers that are often based in generosity.
Yeah.
And then since the divine would not harm us, especially not if you're especially asking for the God of love and light and, prosperity, the divine would never hurt us. And at least I don't believe that the divine would hurt us. It might allow harm, but I don't believe that it is harmful in its essence. So it's kind of like the way I'm hearing this is, and this also reflects my experience, is if you sit in your own flow with your own soul and you say, what's the best right thing to do right now? Then you do that thing. You're preparing yourself for more divine flow. Also, giving and receiving, we live in duality, so giving and receiving are normal aspects of each other. So the giving to that person or that charity or that situation may not immediately be returned by them because they might not be in a position to give, but the gift might come from an unexpected place because you've put yourself in the giving and receiving flow. Does that sound like am I understanding what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I have found that to be true. And that as we're talking, there's a moment that pops to mind. I'm originally from Chicago and lived on the south side, took the train into the loop. And there was this gentleman who was often standing there. And I honestly don't remember if he was like Salvation Army or if he was, asking for money for himself. But he was often there. And some days I would give. And there was this day I reached in, and I mean, I was a kid, and this is the 80s, so I had like $5 in my pocket, which, seemed like a fair amount of money. And I reached in my pocket, and all I had was a $5 bill, and I heard, give it to him. So I was like, okay, that's my lunch money. And so I gave him the money. Well, it turned out that day that a client called me and took me to Lowry Steakhouse. That day was the day that worked for him. So that's like my little, almost kindergarten level story, but it gave me faith in exactly what you're talking about. That generosity and flow, it's a system. It's like we were talking earlier about it's a universal system, but we're individuals within the system. So if we're in that flow and we're plugged into the soul, then it doesn't have to be what's obvious for us to have it come to us, because there's somebody else out there who's also being guided to be generous.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so easy to get hung up in what we believe the return has to be, and it's so easy to get hung up on what we believe we need to be doing in any given moment. And it just creates this resistance. And I think that, what you need right now could be a nap. What you need to do right now could literally be just to lay on the couch and stare at the ceiling.
So it might be generosity with yourself, which is a form of self-compassion.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that. I like that. So one of the other points that we agreed to make sure that we got to in this particular episode or segment is this whole idea of our gifts. And having our gifts and getting to know our gifts, but also receiving in exchange for our gifts. Because, we have spiritual gifts, we have metaphysical gifts, we also have practical gifts. And it's so much easier sometimes to figure out how much to charge for the practical gifts. Like, it's really easy for me to determine what I'm going to do. And when I go in and I charge a company for training, because they're standards, it's kind of like you charge X amount of dollars and or this is their budget, or there's these guideposts, right? Yeah. And it's something everybody around us is comfortable with. But so when we're coming into this age where more and more people like us are charging for gifts that are metaphysical, there's some people are really good at it. Like, we have, people who charge hundreds of dollars an hour very comfortably for it. But then there are other people who feel like this whole idea of our spiritual gifts should be given because they were given to us. So where are you at with that?
That's a big one.
Yeah.
That's a hard one. I mean, all I can say is I think that humans, I guess I have a few things, but the first thing that comes to mind is I think that humans are sort of meant to challenge ourselves and to live on the edge a bit. And in this case, what that might mean is kind of bumping up against some discomfort and being okay with the discomfort, allowing it as part of the natural process of growth, which in this case means, for me, probably would mean charging more than I think I should. But it can't be, I think that there's a balance, right? You don't want it to be sort of this arbitrary thing either, right? There has to, it's almost just like the feeling that it evokes in you. Okay. I want to charge, the X amount because somebody told me to, but that feels like not enough. I'm going to bump it up by $100. That feels a little, that just feels like highway robbery. Pull it back a little. Like what feels uncomfortable, but not unrealistic or not doable. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just a practical way to look at it, I guess. Being okay with that edge of discomfort.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that I've worked with myself and with my clients on. I've been doing this I've been doing this kind of work since middle school. I've been charging for it for almost 30 years, which seems like an incredibly long time. And it's all just gone like a flash. So for myself, and this is something that, because it's worked for me, and that I've also worked with a lot of clients along these lines, is, there's a mindset out there of charge as much as you possibly can for every hour. Well, the problem with that is that if you don't believe and feel like you're worth or comfortable with $800 an hour, you're not going to make it. There's this barometer, and you talk about this edge of discomfort, and I like that because it helps you with your own barometer. So, if you're comfortable, I know a woman who's extremely good at tarot card readings who, after 15 years, finally started charging $75 an hour. Well, that's actually pretty low, but that was her comfort zone. And she was in a situation where she didn't have to. Her husband had a good job. She didn't have to make more, so she didn't want to challenge herself to do more. She'd rather work 30 hours a week and do 30 sessions than charge more and do 20 sessions. So there's a point, going back to your earlier comments about what is success. For her, 30 clients a week at $50 an hour was more a determination of success than $100 an hour and 15 clients, even though it would have had the same net results. So this is where we go. We can look to the outside for information, but we have to try it on and see what our divine guidance is telling us to do. So I like the way that all these points all kind of support each other. There's a consistency in the reality of that voice, that spirit inside of us is actually where all of the answers are, and everything outside of us just gives us those reflections.
Yeah, and I think really strengthening one's relationship with the divine is probably the best advice I have, because I think when that happens, charging money for your divine gifts kind of becomes less of a kind of sticking point. It becomes a lot easier to do.
Well, and a lot of people have heard this, but I think it bears repeating. When somebody says, well, if you're gifted, shouldn't you just give it away? Because that's a gift from God. Well, even churches who you go for a free service, even churches need to support themselves in some way. We're not breatharians, and we need housing, and there's the human part of us, even if we carry this divine gift. And this is part of the mindset where I think artists are also marginalized. And it really kind of bugs me because now in the middle of the coronavirus, who are we without our art and our content, right? Like without something beautiful or interesting or challenging or that engages our mind, who are we, I mean, I'm going to point to this picture behind me. This is a picture my son took of Chicago, and it makes me happy. And it's there because my son is then with me all the time, and my hometown is with me all the time, and there's always art with me, you know. And if we look behind you, you have beautiful things that keep us engaged. So, you know, the spiritual gifts and the artistic gifts being marginalized is something that we really have to push through. Mm-hmm. And that means that we can't believe the misinformation we've been given. Like, we can't believe the people who say only churches should get money, or only accountants should get money. No, accountants, great, they should get money. But we need money for those basic human experiences. And just because your gift, like an athlete's gift, is from God, just because my gift is reading and perception and your gift is spiritual guidance and insight, those are no less valuable. Those are arbitrary figures, and there's no reason that we should live subsistently. Yeah. And so that sort of faith in our gift and the value of our gift sort of comes into play here. Yeah. I think I just talked a lot.
No, that's, I mean, it's really good stuff. And I appreciate that as an artist and, you know, as a spiritual guide. I mean, these are not things that typically, you know, are thought of as being valued. And I think that, like you say, I mean, we're given this opportunity at this time to really recognize the value of beauty and insight and sort of, philosophy and, you know, faith and all these things that don't necessarily have, material consistency, you know, and, hopefully there's more consciousness around this during this time, and that those that do appreciate art and appreciate writing and appreciate guidance, spiritual guidance, begin to recognize the value in it and actually choose to, you know, generously give back to those that are inspiring them, you know, including the artists and the guides and the thinkers. And
well, you know, we have some of this now, but it's actually, you know, gone out of style. Patronage has gone out of style. Mm-hmm. And we wouldn't have Michelangelo. We wouldn't have Da Vinci. We wouldn't have great minding, great art, and great thinkers, and great scientists, or greatly educated people, if it hadn't been for those people who have money recognizing the value of the great artists and thinkers and scientists in their courts. And they have been self-serving, but there's a recognition in that. And so this goes back to challenging all the things that we're taught so that we can turn false beliefs into compost and use it as soil to grow the soul. So
I love that, challenging the beliefs. It's really interesting. I hadn't really thought about that on such a global scale. I mean, but definitely that belief, you know, I would love to see that one undone, you know, this idea that even though I might not explicitly be charging for certain things, like this video, you know, like if this video reaches 100 people or thousands and thousands of people, I mean, I'm not necessarily going to get anything from that. And yet who's to say that I'm not giving so much and you're not giving so much to a whole lot of people through this? And who's to say that they but that it would be weird for them to give something back, you know, in the form of a donation or something like that. I mean, I'm not asking for that by any means, but
we don't have a donate.
What's so weird about it? I mean, what, like the question is, what is so strange? What would be weird about that? But it is weird. In our culture, that would be weird. Because we don't have a GoFundMe right now. Like, we didn't set up a GoFundMe. We didn't use some sort of special tech, you know, app that asks for money.
No, and that's actually, I mean, is that in the future of metaphysical life support? I don't know. I I am guided to do this, and I'm paying for everything from the studio time to my assistant time to any of the equipment. And eventually I want to have some gifts for my guest. I'm just guided to do this. And it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy. And yet I feel strongly that my soul is telling me that this is what I need to be doing now. I can rationalize it in a lot of ways. I don't know exactly why, other than this is what my soul is telling me to do. I'm driven to do it. I guess I have a choice, but I guess I also don't feel like I have a choice. My hope as a human being is that people see this and they come to you, or they come to me, or they come to other guests and they use our services. That would be great, but we're not doing it for that purpose. We're doing it because I believe that there's opportunity for dialogue and growth, and you believe that too, because this is part of our generosity, is creating a platform to talk about things that matter that we don't have enough space to talk about.
Right.
So I'm so grateful for your willingness and presence here.
Yeah, and I mean, and just to tag on to that, I would love for this to open up channels of dialogue for me, for anyone out there who wants that, and I'll give you, my information so people can contact me if they want to continue this dialogue. And I, again, just like you, I mean, I'm called into the conversation. And I definitely feel like there are people out there who I haven't met yet, who I'm meant to meet. This is one of those sort of daydreams I've been having, like my people, there's more people out there I'm supposed to know. Who are they? Maybe this video will attract them. That's my dog, sorry.
And that's, bring your baby onto the screen.
It's just that Georgia, my daughter, just came home, so she's got to bark. Hi, Georgia.
Hi, Georgia.
Naomi says hi.
Hi, Naomi.
Okay, can you be in charge of her for a minute?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. That's what happens when you're at home. You have dogs.
Well, and we have families, and that's actually an amazing opportunity that women in our time have that maybe other women didn't have. I mean, first of all, we're living longer, we're healthier, technology is on our side. And for example, it inspires me every day that Louise Hay started her empire when she was 54.
Yeah.
I'm about that age, and I have been doing this work for 30 years, but I've been doing it in a different way. I had a son to raise, and now that he's away at school, this is his sibling. And I tell him that, it's like, I'm creating your sibling. You're going to inherit it. I've got nobody else to give it to. So, but as women in this age, people in this age, second careers, second lives, second opportunities. Even if you think even of a short lifespan, I have another 25 or 30 years. That's a whole nother family or child or project. That's a whole nother thing to grow.
Right.
So I'm excited, and I think we're in an amazing time.
Yeah, we are.
So Sarah, for today, since your family is calling to you, and we've had this great opportunity to talk, what are some thoughts or things that you might want to say as we wrap up, and then maybe in the next week or two I can get you back on?
That'd be amazing. There's always something new that comes up. There's always something more to talk about.
I mean, we have so many things. We have the environment. We have the Enneagram, how we met.
Parenting, which you just talked about.
Parenting. One of the things that we touched on one time was how we have this opportunity to learn to use language in a more inclusive way, and just noticing sort of the strange automatic things we do with language.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, I think that there's something really interesting about when we are sort of living in the kind of political climate that we are living in, how that can also be
I do not have corona. I have just normal sinus stuff.
Right. I know. You're fine. So
you're saying the political situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times people who are on a spiritual path kind of are really working towards non-judgment and just sort of being okay with whatever is. And I think that that's all well and good. But we do but at some point we're going to bump up against injustice. And so I'm really interested in conversations about, racial, economic, ecological justice, and how that can actually be a vehicle for spiritual development, and that we all really, we would all benefit if we were all on that vehicle and doing something about the injustices in the world.
I agree so much, and I think this is a really potent conversation. One of my other good friends, her name is Erica. She is a conflict manager. She is a trained conflict resolution person. She's an 8 with a 9 wing. But and that's Enneagram talk. Sarah knows exactly what I mean. And she also works with diversity, and she's an amazing person. So maybe if we can make Zoom work, we can get all three of us on here at the same time. I think that could be a fantastic collaboration.
I would love that. I would love to ask questions of people who are on the front lines of sort of fighting injustice. I do it in my mind all the time. I'm always thinking about it and kind of aware of it, and acutely aware of it to the point where it almost becomes sort of like torture, that I feel like I need to do something about it. But then there's like this feeling of like impotence, like what can I do? I don't know what I can do, and just bringing awareness to it, I think is what I can do right now.
I love your confession that sometimes there's a feeling of impotence. And I think that's one of the big reasons why people avoid these topics, is because we often feel impotent.
Yeah.
And I had to sort of stop watching the Corona news a couple of days ago, and I have to check back in to find out what's going on in the world today. I've promised myself an hour of checking back in today. And I think that, when we talk about grief from earlier, it's just like talk about the grief of impotence in the face of people dying. The face of impotence, and, these dramatic stories of, and the contrast of some people saying, oh, I just got the sniffles, and other people, I read the story of this 16-year-old boy who was just like trampled on the chest, and we don't know how he's going to do.
Yeah.
So we've got so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll connect and create something next time. For you, the audience, this has been Sarah Denae. Thank you. And you guys are amazing. Please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. We're all about respectful conversations. We don't have to always agree, but respect is always key. So go ahead and write your comments, your thoughts. Looking forward to talking to you more. And I hope that you're all staying safe and well. And for those of you that are concerned about liberty, I am too, but we still need to isolate right now and figure out how we're going to reclaim our liberties, but also remain safe and healthy. God bless you. The divine bless you. Whatever words work for you. Thank you so much.